Hello there, I'm Nerys Frater. I'm a GP in West Wales, and alongside that I run an online health business that's called the Lifestyle Clinic, where I help people with type 2 diabetes putting it into remission. So I've got a husband, 2 boys, and I mostly work from home in my attic office when I'm not working as a GP partner. I went to Betty because I was burning out. I couldn't rest. I was lurching from one thing to the next all day, every day, and I was constantly feeling I wasn't doing anything properly. My eczema was the final straw because it had gone so bad that my hands were bleeding. I was constantly itchy, and I knew that it was my body telling me to slow down, but actually I felt completely unable to rest. So that was the brief when I started with her. I wanted to continue doing everything I was doing though. I love running a business, I love being a GP, well, most of the time. And of course I appreciate time with my family, but I really needed to step off that busy, relentless treadmill of achieving more and more and actually never feeling satisfied. And the guilt as well. I'd sit with my children and I'd feel guilty that I wasn't working. When I was working, I felt guilty that I wasn't with them, and I just couldn't find a way to rest. So Betty was recommended to me, and what appealed most to me was the speed. I wasn't looking for months and months of coaching, of talking about how I could delegate and say no and to sleep better. I know all of that stuff. I just wanted to get to the root cause of this feeling of restlessness and not feeling I could rest. That's what I was after. And that's exactly what I got with Betty. She understood straight away that I needed to function differently in my business and life to be able to continue and to find out what was driving these behaviours. So I worked with her for 3 months to do that, and it was such a fascinating journey. With her help, I realised that my nervous system was wired to believe that a lack of productivity was linked to danger. So therefore, rest was seen as actually a risk to my life. Now, of course, I know that's not true, and I never would believe that with my conscious brain. But it turns out that within me as a little girl that had suffered multiple allergic reactions as a very young child, and of course these are dangerous by their very nature, danger to life, and my young brain had made the incorrect association that these events were because I was weak. And it seems that ever since then I've been trying to prove my self-worth by giving myself challenges, difficult challenges, and being constantly busy. So now, once I knew that for the first time, I could really see and understand why trying to rest was so stressful for me, because it was literally triggering alarm systems in my brain, and I would end up feeling more wound up than I was when I was working, which obviously then kept me busy. And once we saw that, we were able to release it and resolve the misfiring in just a few hours. Now, I found every single session I did with Betty so fascinating, mainly because the root of the problem was quite often quite abstract and something I never would have thought relevant. So each time I would go, we'd discover and release something new, and I would feel quite different afterwards, and usually, just within a few hours. And this work is so important. It is by far the most impactful thing I've done for my personal life and for the business. And it's only now, since things have been uprooted, that I can see how much of an impact they had. They were colouring everything. It's like that's the lens through which I saw life. I can't see that lens as an adult. It's just how my world looked. So I was seeing the world through the lens of not being good enough. So I was constantly looking for evidence to prove that, and then working super hard to try to counteract it too. So it is early days, but I can already see massive differences in myself. The clearest example from a business perspective was that towards the end of the coaching, I wrote and launched a short online program, and it sold out in 2 hours. And that's never happened before, never even close. And I know why it happened. It was because I thought I was good enough and the work that I produced was good enough. And working through that lens completely changes everything. When you're certain, other people feel it. If you're doubting yourself, as I was before, I think they were picking up on that. even if somebody can't name it, I think the apologetic way in which I used to sell things was apparent to everybody, apart from me. So now I don't need to search for courses to prove myself. I own my expertise out loud. I can talk about my work publicly without flinching. And criticism is just criticism. It's not evidence that I'm some sort of a fraud. And another new talent I've mastered since working with Betty is delegation. I've had an assistant for a year, and I didn't hand much over to her, not nearly enough anyway. And my explanations were reasonable, it's quicker if I do it, she might not get it right, I'm probably the best one to do it, and I really believed that. But then because I uprooted these associations that I made as a little girl about not wanting to be a liability, changed everything. I now delegate without thinking about it. No internal debate, it just happens. And the time and space this has given me has been totally priceless. It's changed how I work as a GP as well, which I honestly didn't expect. I'm more efficient, I get to the core of what's actually wrong with somebody much faster. Consultations are more fun because I just somehow have more headspace to actually see and hear the person in front of me instead of managing myself the whole time, and I didn't even realise I was doing that. And of course at home, I do what I need to do in work and then I can shut the laptop. And sometimes I just sit with my family, not being productive, and that for me is something completely new. So I feel lighter and everything is simpler and easier than it ever was. Now, I think everybody needs to do this work. And if you want results faster and want them to last, then I would really do it with a professional like Betty. And I'd say to the skeptics, because I was one, I'm a doctor, I like science and practical things, and I've traditionally never had much patience for anything waffly or made up, and hypnosis was well outside my comfort zone. What I actually found, though, was that listening to what my own mind was producing was so much fun. I remember thinking quite seriously at one point that I'd happily do this every single week. And of course, Betty was the best guide. Now, I consider this personal growth work an essential investment at every level of business, especially probably at the beginning, because that's when you're mostly doubting and in your head. And I'll very likely need Betty again. And I'm proud of that, actually, because this is hard. Of course it is. Otherwise, everybody could and would be doing it. And I think probably we do owe it to the people we help to help ourselves first. So what I can see now is that it's genuinely possible to hold down a busy job, run a business, have a family and hobbies, and still have time to sit down with a cup of tea and feel at ease and content. And that's exactly what we set out to do at the beginning. So thank you a million, Betty.